A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb. Two players I hear often compared to one another in terms of trying to bring together some form of an argument of who's the better player. And truth be told, pick your poison. These are both incredibly good football players. However, I do find a lot of the arguments around these two players to be quite disingenuous from both sides. To begin with, I'm just going to state the thing outright, guys. They're very different type of players. In my opinion, you look at a CeeDee Lamb, what you have here is a motion Z or a slot receiver, to where A.J. Brown is your prototypical X-aligned boundary receiver. So the stereotypes about these two guys that you hear from both sides of the fan bases are kind of true, right? A.J. Brown's just a guy you kind of line up in a line of scrimmage and you let him beat somebody, right? CeeDee Lamb benefits the most from getting free releases and being able to be put on a team's not necessarily their best corner in terms of the way he gets his production. Me personally, I don't care, man. I look at football as it comes down to, can you jumpstart the offense on first down? Are you a go-to guy on third down? And what do you do inside the pay dirt in the red zone? And both of these guys, no matter how they get there, they win in that way, okay? And then the last thing I'll add to this is that I think it's a little disingenuous to say that they can only do those things. A.J. Brown is only an X-aligned kind of boundary side receiver. No, I can show you him playing as a motion Z. I can show you him playing basically out of the slot and being a very, very productive player. And in the same breath, when people say that CeeDee Lamb is only a motion Z or a slot aligned wide receiver, well, that's not true either, because I can show you, examples of him as well, basically being lined up on the line of scrimmage with a chance for a team to press him, and him being a good enough, route runner and good enough off the release to beat you and make plays that way. I think the arguments are a little disingenuous. But with that said, let's jump in. Let's talk a little bit about the style, the structure, and what A.J. Brown in particular is going to bring to a Kellen Moore-led system. Because while everyone's talking about CeeDee Lamb, they really should be talking about Amari Cooper when you're talking about the role inside of the system and the way things are played. Or if you want to go to the Chargers, Quentin Johnson or Mike Williams, who unfortunately got injured early on for them, because that's the role of A.J. Brown inside of this system. All right, y'all. Let's go ahead and let's audible this thing, and let's get into today's topic. What I'm going to say right now is, if you look at man coverage, and you could look at different things like, okay, well, let's look at the grading, and both of these dudes are graded out really highly. CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown. I know that grading is definitely kind of it's a subjective thing, but it's impartial. It's people who are outside the organizations giving you opinions about what they see on film from the guys. But I also think you could deep dive more than that. You could look at the percentage of shares of targets. So if you're looking at something like who can beat man coverage, look at that, filter by the percentage of shares and look at the names and tell me if that list doesn't make a ton of sense, right? There's some guys around the 10, 11 mark I don't necessarily agree with, but for the most part, what I see on that list, I mean, maybe move a guy here, move a guy there, but I would say it's pretty dang representative of who I think the top 20 guys are at beating man coverage. I think it's pretty dang obvious when you take a look at the percentage of shares, which tells you which way that defenses want to play these guys and which way offenses want to create matchup based off these guys. In the case of A.J. Brown, this is something I think that Kellen Moore's never had before, if I'm going to be quite honest. Because, look, I really like Mike Williams, and Mike Williams is a vertical threat, big guy, he could get physical, all those things. He's not A.J. Brown. He's not to that level. Right? Quentin Johnson, the young man that they drafted the year prior, still got time. We don't know what he's going to be, but right now it's laughable to try to put him in A.J. Brown's territory. Amari Cooper has been to that territory before with A.J. Brown. I mean, he's been that kind of a player before, right? That can elevate and uplift the team. We saw what he did to Dallas in 2018 once they traded for and acquired him. But I think by the time that it got around, Kellen took over in 2019 for them. By the time it got fully implemented and you saw the full abilities of this offense with him in 21, I think that's where you saw Amari Cooper getting kind of pulled away from, though. They were leaning in a little bit more to Michael Gallup. CeeDee Lamb was definitely on the uprise at that point. Like, they were kind of pulling back from him. And I would even argue they moved away from him a year too early, but he regressed in 21 under them. They were a year early on it, but I do think that he is the isolation player in a 3-by-1 stack. And he was really good at beating man. And beating man means different things, guys. I can show you examples of, We'll just go off of earlier comments about CeeDee Lamb, and we can talk about, A.J. Brown. Playing man coverage can mean different things. There's different ways of playing man. Just because someone is manned up on you does not mean they are playing press. But both of these dudes have example on their tape of beating press because these are two of the best man, route runners in the league. These dudes can get off the line of scrimmage. These guys can beat these things. There's definitely elements on their tape from both guys where they are absolutely destroying man. There's also elements on their tape where you can see these two young men lined up on the line of scrimmage and they're being manned up on. But these guys are either playing a mirror technique to where they're just mirroring the receiver and they're not necessarily jamming them at the line of scrimmage. So their route running just kind of takes over and creates a separation. Or you see a bail technique where they come in and they're playing a man concept, but then they're bailing out and then make it worse. And a lot of times when you see really good route runners and really physical dudes, they bail on an angle and it really leads you to know that they're trying to filter the play inside. So it's quite obvious what they're trying to do to you. I mean, to me, I look at these two guys and I think to myself, like, they have never had an A.J. Brown in isolation yet. Kellen Moore has never had an A.J. Brown in isolation yet. Okay, he's had a Keenan Allen. He's had a CeeDee Lamb. Well, I think DeVonta Smith is going to absolutely freaking have a big year. I think he's the guy that, in my opinion, is going to benefit the way that Keenan Allen, the way that CeeDee Lamb can benefit from getting those free releases and routing you up at the top of a route stem. I think that's going to be DeVonta Smith in this system. I don't think outside of, Amari Cooper's early years, and by the time they got the full scale of this offense together, it wasn't there for them yet. I don't think he's ever had an A.J. Brown, guys. That isolation play is going to be a big deal because when you can 3-by-1 stack somebody and put that guy on isolation at the top, of course they're doubling to it depending on the system they're playing. A lot of times they'll use safety help on that isolation guy at the top, right? But what that does is if you overcommit to A.J. Brown, now that over route, those inside breaking routes where there's supposed to be a safety there, yeah, those open up big time. That's where the Dallas Goederts and the DeVonta Smiths can start eating you alive off of those stacked formations. I think when I look at this thing and I judge its totality and what I see from A.J. Brown, I think he's the guy that's going to make this offense kind of go. Now, what I will say is on the part of both teams, they got to do a little better job at basically getting the other targets to other players. I do think both teams are struggling with that, and I do think that if you look at the trajectory of the postseason, the more you can allocate the resources of those target shares across your roster, the harder it is to defend you. When's the last time a guy had above 1,650 yards receiving and then went on to win the Super Bowl? In the entirety of the 21st century, it's only happened one time, to my knowledge, which was Cooper Kupp. We've had guys that have definitely got there. Julio Jones in his prime, 2018. Julio Jones had a season like that, but then they blew that big lead and he ended up taking an L in that game in 16. And then in 18, he had a big year as well. So, I mean, it's never really kind of aligned itself very well to when you have these dudes that are getting these huge numbers like that. So if you ask me, one of the things that the Eagles have got to be better at with Kellen Moore is, while A.J. Brown has definitely been a guy who can jumpstart your offense, while A.J. Brown has definitely been a really reliable third down target and a guy that can absolutely destroy you in the red zone, especially on those little hitches and comebacks where you make a missed tackle there. You missed a tackle. I will say they need to be better at finding other ways to get other guys involved so it's not so freaking obvious what you're doing down in, down out. You look at the Green Bay Packers and how they got, how they dropped Dallas in the first round last year. Look at their target allocation, guys. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs and the way that they won the Super Bowl the past 2 years and look at their target allocations, right? Kelsey's the centerpiece. They're pretty dang good, though, at building off and distributing those targets, guys, to be quite honest. I think the Philadelphia Eagles, no matter if you use more motion, no matter if you use more stacked sets to create free releases, no matter if you maybe you lean a little heavier into 11 personnel or maybe you even, scale up some things like some more spread concepts where you're in 10-man or 1-man personnel, 4 wide receiver sets essentially, guys, 0 personnel. So where you got a 5 wide receiver set. No matter what you do there, if you're going to be successful, you got to find a way of jump-starting your offense and not making it obvious that every target when you're trying to jump-start your offense is going to A.J. Every time you need to be bailed out of a third down, you're looking A.J. In the vast majority of times where you're throwing the football inside the red zone, it's going to A.J. We got to find a way of incorporating more guys. We got to get better at that. And that's one thing I can say, like if you look at Dallas, you look at Philly, you look at any team where you got a receiver that's starting to get over that 1,500 threshold. And definitely when you start looking at where, CeeDee put himself last year, we're getting over 1,700 yards. When you start getting in that type of threshold, guys, Yeah, you need to look at the overall health of the offense. That player is balling out. That player is really good. What's your offense in its totality, though? Because we need dudes to step up. Straightforward. I know I can trust DeVonta. DeVonta's there. Dallas Goedert's got to stay healthy on the field. There's no excuse why a guy is as good as Dallas Goedert is not producing 750-plus yard receiving seasons, season in, season out. He's that type of guy. He's that good. It should be happening. He's got to get better at maintaining himself on the field, and he's got to get better in terms of actually producing when the ball's coming into him a little bit. I don't know what they're going to do here from the running back position, guys. I don't know where that third receiver is going to come from, right? Could be a third wide receiver, could be the running back, could be Grant Calcaterra, it could be whatever. We've got to find a way of allocating, some of these target shares if we're going to achieve the ultimate success on the 2024 NFL season. Like I said, guys, if you're asking me what is A.J. Brown's role in this offense, he's going to be sometimes the outside stack receiver. Sometimes he'll be the top in terms of the stack receiver. Sometimes he'll be your inside guy. But I think if you did this down in and down out and measured how often he was being used, I think he's the guy who's going to be in isolation on the boundary. I think he's the guy who's going to cause, things to open up from those stack sets because he's going to draw that safety's eyes. And now anything that's coming across formation, it's probably got a shot at hitting if you can block it. That's what I think his role is going to be. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all so much. I would love to add you to the Cerebral Football community. If you want to join us, just need you to click here. And also, if you'd like to see a video, YouTube is telling me that you would appreciate this video right here. All right, y'all. Peace. I'm out of here.